Dublin men's football team have been blessed over the years with having a great calibre of goalkeeper, from Paddy Cullen to John O'Leary to Stephen Cluxton. I'm happy to say the ladies' football team is in exactly the same boat, and I'm delighted to be talking today to Cliodhna O'Connor, the current captain and goalkeeper of the Dublin team. Nice to talk to you, Cliodhna.
Thanks.
Cliodhna, where did your interest in sport start?
I suppose I was lucky enough to go to a primary school. It was St Helens Primary School in Portmarnock, and I think there's a lot of people in Portmarnock would agree with me that for the girls that went to the school, it gave us a great start in terms of sport. We were encouraged to do or try everything. Do you know what I mean? We played badminton, soccer, camogie, basketball, a bit of anything that was going. And I think that just instilled in all of us a kind of maybe an ethos of participation, you know, in terms of sport. Like out of my close friends, most of us have played either camogie or football for Dublin at some stage, be it underage or senior level. And then we have a few that would play, you know, a friend of mine's playing volleyball for Ireland and that, you know. So we all came from the same school, the same setup, the same teachers, you know. So I think that's what kicked us all off, you know.
Yeah. And what age would you have been, Cliodhna, when you first got interested in it?
I suppose I would have been, in terms of Gaelic games, maybe about 10, that type of thing. You know, I started playing on the school teams and then transferred into the club. Camogie first with the club for a couple of years until they started a football team within the club. I can't remember the first year that they started, but we definitely went in for camogie first. So that sort of 10, 11 years around.
Yeah. And at that time, was there many girls interested in Gaelic football?
We kind of, well, it's definitely grown, without a shadow of a doubt, it's grown. It was probably the done thing at that time, because there was not a whole lot in terms of other extracurricular activities. You know, the GAA club was quite a central thing, so I'd say that everybody tried it out at some stage. Whether they stayed with it or not is different, but I think most girls I know, let's say, I'm just talking about Portmarnock, most people would have tried it at least once or twice anyway. And then I think maybe as the years went on, that there's more things to do in Portmarnock, like everywhere in Ireland, you know. So clubs are fighting for their own survival in terms of their own participation. But it's definitely, I think I know membership of ladies Gaelic football nationally is growing. Do you know what I mean? So,
there's no doubt about it. Yeah. And Naomh Mearnog was a local club.
It was, yeah. So it's a really, really great club, and there's a lot of great people, and there was a lot of people who, as I say, camogie was first there, and then kind of 2 or 3 instrumental people kicked off the ladies football. Mick Walsh being one of them, who's still there today. He's still on the sidelines. You know, it's that, I suppose, nearly the story that you see in a lot of clubs, that there's one person that if it wasn't for them, you know, it would never have happened. Somebody had to actually sit and go, right, we're going to make this happen, you know. So we're lucky that there's a lot of good people there, and we've great facilities. We've super facilities, you know. So we don't really want for much in Portmarnock.
That's great. Yeah. And at that time, playing, there was leagues, and was there many other clubs around at the time? Yeah,
most of the big clubs would have had Gaelic football or ladies football teams. You know, I remember playing the likes of Naomh and I think Ballybowden and that, and so you would have had regular enough matches and leagues and that, and you know, we would have gone to the Phoenix Park. I remember everyone really remembers going there to play camogie on, you know, windy and wet Saturday mornings, with no dress rooms and that sort of stuff. But it was we'd travelled around a good bit playing different matches, and we had during the summer, then you'd have your mini leagues and that, and so there was plenty of activity in
Any early success in your career?
Any early success? Well, actually, do you know what? We probably had more success with camogie earlier on. There was real strong camogie, and I remember we won, I think, the championships most years, and then at my age group, when we got to Fela, I remember Ballybowden knocked us out in the Dublin Fela, and we were distraught. We were absolutely distraught. I remember the day it happened, and you know, it's we just thought that was the be all and end all, you know. So, and then camogie, or with football, then we had, we were decent because a lot of us had kind of played a lot of sport in school again, you see, so we were pretty good in terms of our general athletic ability, hand-eye coordination, all of that type of stuff. So, you know, we were kind of all-rounders, so we gave it a good shot anyway.
And how did you end up as a goalkeeper?
Well,
did you play outfield first, or just go straight in?
Well, again, the principal in the primary school, Bill Lowe was his name at the time. He's retired now, but I used to kind of play a little bit in goals because I was tall, and I had a long kick.
Yeah.
So that kind of meant
two good attributes.
You went in goals. You know what I mean? You could catch it over your head. You were half tall, and you could kick it, you know, a decent length.
Yeah.
So I ended up going in goals. At the start I didn't particularly like it, and then I kind of battled against it then when I was a teenager, sort of my early teens. And then there was a time when I was, I don't know, would I have been 15, 16? I don't know what age I was, but I hated it, absolutely hated it. And the guys in the club laugh now at me because they remember they'd be knocking on my door trying to go to matches, and I'd be hiding because I didn't want to go, and I'd be upstairs. And you know, it was great when my mum was out and if I was in the house on my own, because if she knew I was there, she'd be kicking me out the door and telling me to go. Do you know?
Yes,
but
of course,
so I went through a phase where I didn't like it, and it was because there was no training. I suppose there was no specific goalkeeper training.
Right.
And it can be a difficult position to be in if you know you're conceding goals left, right, and centre, and you're sort of standing there going, well, I don't know what to do, you know.
Yeah.
So then the guy came to Portmarnock, and I began to get specific training, and all of a sudden then I realised, you know what, I can actually play. I can actually do this position, and then I just kind of went from strength to strength then.
It certainly did. I think it was Brad Friedel who said there's no hiding place for a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
On a football pitch.
Yeah.
And I can understand, like, a lot of people love to play out. If you're playing out in the field, you know, you can have an off day, but for a goalkeeper it's very difficult because you're in the spotlight most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it takes a certain mentality, I think, because, you know, you have to be able to find a balance between self-criticism possibly and then trying to improve, you know, because you'll never go through a whole career without conceding a goal or making a mistake. That's impossible, do you know?
Yes.
But the problem is when you're a goalkeeper and you make a mistake, it's so obvious and it can be so costly, you know.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're always kind of living on the edge a little bit, and I suppose you need to learn how to handle that, you know, how to handle being in that position and knowing that if it's the last 2 minutes of a game and you're a point ahead, and being able to handle that, if you were to make a mistake there and drop a ball, you might, I know, you know, it's not only one player or whatever, but you might cost your team the game, that type of thing, you know. So yeah, I suppose you have to be able to deal with that pressure and nearly accept the consequences if it happens, you know.
As you say, it takes a certain type of person, a personality to be good at it, I reckon, you know.
Yeah.
So then you got, in 2002, you got a Dublin call-up.
Yeah,
How did you feel about that? Or was that a surprise? Or were you expecting it?
It was a total surprise. I think I'd been... there was a girl playing for Dublin before me, Suzanne Hughes was her name, she's from Ballyboden, and a really, like, natural talent at goalkeeping. Absolutely brilliant, you know. Yeah. And she was going to... I think she was going to the States. And she announced this kind of at the end of 1 year, so then they were looking, the management at the time were looking to the next year and going, right, we have to find ourselves a goalkeeper. And at that point I was playing with I was in 6th year in school, 5th or 6th year I think, and I was playing with the club team or whatever, and I was getting better and better, and you know, maybe people were saying, you know, there's potential there, she's alright. So it was never really part of my plan, let's say. I was never one of those kids that from they were 10 they've always dreamed of playing for Dublin. That wasn't me at all, you know. And I kind of they rang me and said, would you like to come out and give it a try? And I said yeah, and one of the coach at the time, or the manager at the time, Mick Bowen, he said he'd never forget the first conversation he had with me on the phone, because I said to him, yeah, but am I going to get specific goalkeeping coaching?
Right.
And he thought, he said he was taken aback. He was like, I'm ringing this kid, in inadvertent commas, and asking her to come out to play for Dublin, and she's, saying, well, I'm only coming if I get specific coaching. And he said, he was impressed then, and, with my attitude towards it. And for me, I was saying, well, I know that I need coaching. I can see how much better I've got with coaching. So my attitude was, well, I'm not going to go and try and play for Dublin if someone's not going to pay attention to what I need,
Of course, yeah.
So he actually got our captain at the time, Martina Farrell. Her husband, Dave Cullen, was a goalkeeper by trade and did a lot of coaching. So he came on as a goalkeeping coach, and it was brilliant,
Yeah.
Now I was thrown into the deep end without a shadow of a doubt, and I was, I only had club experience. I'd played 1 year minor, but I think there was 3 of us, 3 goalkeepers, and I didn't get a look in. I think we only had 1 match because we were beaten by Meath in the championship.
Right,
so that was
it. Yeah.
that was my only experience. So I was brought in, and it was basically, right, jump into goals there and sink or swim type thing,
Yeah. And as you say, you were thrown in the deep end because you make that was your first All-Ireland final? Was that first year?
Yeah, we got to the final. We played Mayo in the final, and so it was very much, and even with communication, like in goals, you have to be quite vocal. Not, I wouldn't say you need to boss people around, but you need to kind of control the defence, let's say. So here was me, new into the whole scene, people who'd been there for years, and they're telling me, you got to talk, and I'm looking at them going, how am I supposed to talk to her? She's been playing for 10 years. I haven't got a fucking clue what's going on,
Yeah.
And so that was difficult. And I think, but maybe it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I just had to get on with it,
Yeah.
And we did get to all the way to the All-Ireland final, and I suppose it was a bit of a whirlwind. And maybe I don't know, did it give me a unrealistic perspective on on how things were? I came in, it was a good setup, good coach, got to the final. Maybe I thought this is the way it is every year,
Yes,
and then you learn very quickly that that's not the way it is every year,
That's it, yeah. Did you ever think, 10 years down the road now, and you've made that position totally your own, and you're still doing it?
Yeah. So it's, I kind of take every year as it comes, and people say, how long are you going to play for, what are you going to do, and I usually don't decide, when a year finishes. I kind of just give myself a bit of time off and see how it goes, and see how everything else is going for me, and then we go, right, do we give it another year?
Yeah.
Because I believe you can't do it unless you really, really want to.
Of course. Yeah.
Because you end up resenting it, you end up you bring a negativity to the whole setup, you have to be, because it requires huge commitment, and it requires, if you're going to do it, it has to be nearly your top priority, because you have to build everything around it in terms of your training and your lifestyle and all that. So if your heart's not in it, there's no point.
And that's something that some people don't realise, particularly in an amateur game.
Yeah.
The amount of commitment and time that people give to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the advancement of the game, in terms of, well, let's say all GAA games, they're getting so much more, the coaching, the training, everything is getting so much more scientific. They're pushing it to new levels. But at some point you have to ask, what does that require of the players in an amateur game? They're not, and you see people going off to AFL and soccer and all this to get new coaching structures and techniques and everything, which is great. We have to try and progress what we do and educate ourselves without a doubt. But we always have to remember that if you're taking examples from, if you go to an AFL club in Australia, that these guys are professional, they can train 3 times a day, and they're getting paid to train 3 times a day. And if you're coming back then and imposing that, or not imposing it, but bringing it back to the amateur context. What effect does it have on the lives of people and their families and their their development as people?
Sure.
It's
tough. It's a huge. It requires unbelievable dedication, I think, to sustain it over a long period of time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know. Even at club level, it's difficult. When you think of coaches, and there's always the problem. Let's say if you're coaching teenagers and people not showing up and this type of thing, and all it happen at every club. But I suppose you have to bring it back to, Mary's priority might be her football, but Joan's priority might be her study and her grinds and her soccer. Now, if we're an amateur community club, those two people are still absolutely entitled to play and participate. And we can't dictate to people that they have to put their football first.
It's a real balancing act, isn't it?
Absolutely,
to get it right. Yeah. But going back to your own career, then after that, the first year you're in the Dublin team, you make an All Ireland. You played in 2 more All Irelands then, before. The big success in 2010.
Yeah, so we had Mayo first, which they got a last-minute goal. It was a pretty poor game of football, actually. I can't even remember the score. I think it was maybe 1-2 to 4 points or something really exciting like that. It was an awful day, and I remember and it just shows how you develop. They got the goal. Someone kicked in a high ball, and it was probably dropping just on the edge of the square, and there was a good few people there in terms of Dublin players, and there was a Mayo girl, Diana Hora. And basically I didn't go for the ball. She got it and she kicked it in the back of the net, right? Yeah. Now, if that same thing happened today, I would say that I would go for the ball and I would have caught it. Do you know? And so it's interesting to see when you look back on different things in your career and how you develop and how you gain confidence and how, things change for you, so I suppose we would have considered the Mayo final was one that we could have and should have won, and we could have and should have played a lot better on the day.
Got away.
We didn't. And then we had Galway the following year, and again we went in at half time ahead, and they got a goal just before half time, I think, which kind of put us off a little bit. And I don't know what happened in the second half. We went back out and they just totally took over. Absolutely turned the whole game around. And so that was another, I suppose, regretful game where we felt that we didn't play well. And then there was kind of a few up and down years. We lost the semi-final the next year, and then there was a sort of changes in managers and different things went on for a while. So I suppose we didn't really feature at the end of the championship for a couple of years. So then we got ourselves back on track. Jerry McGill was our manager, and in 2009 we got to the final against Cork.
Yeah.
And again, that was a heartbreaking one, absolutely. It really was. And again, I suppose we played really well for maybe 90%. And then that last 10% coming to the end, we just sort of, I suppose, ran out of steam a little bit, made some wrong decisions, and Cork were able to, I suppose they had the experience, they knew how to win, they knew how to
that stage, of course,
to do what needed to be done, And then in 2010, obviously we got to the final against Tyrone, and I don't know, I think it was a culmination of many years' work, that final, I know people have said since it, or who were commentating on the day, that perhaps no matter what team was in front of us, we would have won that day, because it was one day that we actually gave a complete performance as a team,
Yes.
And I mean, we had people there. We had Maria Kavanagh, who was playing for Dublin for 15 years at that stage, so it was great for people like that who'd stuck out the good times and the bad times and the awful times, for it to come together.
It certainly, I'd say, would have lifted the the feelings of having lost the previous matches. But it also showed the character of a team. As you say, to lose in a heartbreaking way again in 2009, then to come back the following year.
Yeah.
And win convincingly, because that game against Tyrone, as you say, from the throw in, from people watching the match, Dublin were never going to lose that match. It was like as if they were totally steeled up to win it, you know.
Yeah.
That's what I thought as a spectator, you know.
Yeah, I just think everything, it was one of those days where everything went completely right for us, you know, and I think one of the most beneficial things that we got out of the 2009 situation when we lost to Cork, one of the things that we did is you often hear sports people about losses and say, they ask them, did you watch the match? No, sure, why would I want to watch it? Now in my head that makes absolutely no sense. And one thing that we did is we went back and we reflected on it, and we were really honest to say what went wrong.
Yeah.
And it was difficult to do, and a lot of people
so.
had to take a lot of stuff on the chin, managers and players and everybody. But I suppose we knew that we had to really get to the bottom of the problems we were having, and if we didn't do that, we'd never be able to progress.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah. But it was great, and as you say, it was the culmination of all them previous years, and to win the All Ireland. I mean, that's what every inter-county footballer aspires to. You know, from that point on, I mean, you've got to the stage now in your inter-county career that you're the current captain of the Dublin team in 2011.
Well, actually, I was in 2011. Gemma Fay was captain last year.
That's right, yeah. How, when you were offered the captaincy, was that
it was
an accolade that you were happy with?
It was great, you know. I was vice captain the year before when Denise Masterson was captain in 2010, and you know, Denise was a fantastic leader, without a doubt, and I learnt a lot from operating with her and you know, different things that she did. So when I was asked, I was delighted, you know, as most people will be. So it was, I suppose you know, there is an added, I wouldn't say pressure, but I think you have to become more conscious of other people and of players and of the setup, and
sure,
you know, it's you just have to maybe keep your eyes open a little bit more, you know, in terms of what's going on, and listen to people a bit more and be there if people need to talk to somebody, or if they have issues, you know, you have to make yourself a little bit more available, I think, you know. Yeah.
Do you think inter-county players, they should get more, not recognition, maybe not in terms of, you know, professional money, but for all the work and effort and dedication that they put in, I mean, is there anything that they could be getting that they're not getting now that they should be?
Well, I think, to be honest, I think the GPA are doing an awful lot of work on the men's side of things, you know, and you know, they provide a lot of sports services, even in terms of career advice and career support, and you know, different things like that, and which I think is definitely needed. And I think the GAA in general need to make sure that they're giving back to their players, because I mean, without the players there's no association whatsoever, you know. And as we said, people give up so much of their time and have to live their lives in such a particular way in order to participate at the high levels, and that has to be taken into consideration. And I think anything that people can do, and I suppose associations or clubs or whatever can do in order to make life a little bit easier, and make sure that my personal development isn't hindered because of my participation or because of my commitment to Gaelic games. Right. You know, I should finish up being a better person for my involvement in Gaelic games. You know, it shouldn't take away from any other aspect of my life. I should be able to do everything, if you know what I mean.
I do, I agree with you, Personal accolades that came your way, I mean, the goalkeeper named in the TG Card team of the decade.
Yeah.
You're the only dub on that team, I think.
I was, yeah.
I mean, I know it's a team game, but still, it must be nice to be recognised yourself.
Oh, absolutely, and I'd say anyone who says different is probably lying. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It is nice to get to be recognised as an individual. I think the team of the decade thing was a real surprise to me. I have to say. I remember when I went to the awards night, and we didn't know on the night, so there was just a kind of there was a selection of us who were invited. You know, kind of all stars from the previous 10 years, that type of thing, and so I actually went, and I remember I was wearing like a top and a pair of trousers, right? And someone said to me, "Jesus, I thought you might have worn a dress tonight now that you might be getting an award." And I kind of, that was the first time I actually went, "Oh God, you know, what if I do?" Do you know?
Yeah.
And it was a real surprise. You know, it was funny looking back on, because they showed a bit of footage from the you know, your career or whatever, you know, and looking back, they showed that Mayo final, and you know, I was so young then. You know,
Of course,
I was, you know, I looked like nearly a rabbit in the headlights in the goals, you know, but that's one now that, to be honest, I would I kind of hold.
Yeah, it's a very few people. Well, obviously, it's just only 15.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is. You've won 2 All-Stars.
Yeah.
6 Leinsters, the All-Ireland.
Yeah.
I mean, I know 10 years. 10 years is short, but I mean, you started off very young.
Yeah.
Like today, you've had a very successful GAA career.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think part of it is I was surrounded with, or came in contact with, other great players and great coaches and great managers, and you know, I think that rubs off on you. I think, you know, we talked about when I was thrown in at the deep end, but I was surrounded with and playing with people who were great inspirations to me, you know, and I suppose it just set me on the right track. I've mentioned Martina Farrell, you know, she was captain at the time, and her husband Dave was my goalkeeping coach, but they were fantastic, and their attitude to sport, and Martina's attitude to kind of being a leader nearly, and her commitment to the game was a real example to follow, and it really, you know, I think they just prepared me maybe for what was ahead, you know, and I've had the pleasure playing with some great people, like I mentioned Denise Masterson as well, and you know, my own club mate Orla Kilreevy, she was wing back for Dublin for I don't know how many years, but again, you know, that commitment to the game is just, and commitment to giving your best performance and trying to do, and kind of buying into the team ethos, as when you're there you sign up to do your best, and then you follow through and you try and do your best.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, so I suppose a lot of people fed into helping me develop, I think, as I am today. Yeah.
I know you said you take it year by year now at this stage, but I mean, how do you see the future? Dublin have been very unlucky in the last year or two, you know, losing matches by a point. I mean, if you decide, hopefully you'll decide you'll still be part of them next year. I mean, how do you see the future for the Dublin Ladies team?
I think it'll be a really interesting, 3, 4, 5 years now, the next ones, because we've got a lot of underage talent.
Yeah.
And the challenge will be to blend the experience that's there and bring these kind of younger girls up, you know, and try and blend it all together. That will be the challenge for the managers for the next couple of years, and it won't be done in a year. It'll take a couple of years, you know. You know, where I'm at now in terms of goalkeeping, like a lot of what I want to do is I suppose give back to Dublin football in terms of coaching the underage goalkeepers and people coming up, you know, and maybe give people the head start that wasn't there when I was starting, you know, in terms of if you know, if I got goalkeeping coaching maybe a little bit earlier when I was 14, 15, 16, you know, I might have been a bit more prepared for senior level and that.
I know what you're saying,
you know, so.
Yeah. So do you see another All-Ireland medal in your pocket before you finish?
Oh, I don't know. It's too hard to tell, to be honest, because there's been times when we've been sure we have everything covered. We're going to win, and just it's that there's something missing.
But
So
as you said early on, Cliodhna, look, the standard
Yeah.
has of ladies football has really improved, and whereas Cork dominated for a bit like Kerry in the 80s in the men's game for a few years, but there's probably 5-6 counties now who could start off during an All-Ireland campaign with realistic hopes of possibly winning it.
Yeah, I think so. I think um, the gap is closed without a shadow of a doubt between the kind of top tier, or what was the Cork were on their own there for a couple of years, up leading the pack or whatever, but there are counties who've caught up without a doubt, and it's making for more interesting games and more interesting championships without it. So it's a challenge every year, and there are people with realistic hopes. There are definitely more than one. There's more than one team with a realistic chance of winning All Ireland, and it's great. The standard is improving every single year, and I suppose it's wonderful to see. And ladies football is just in a position now where the more we can improve that, and the more we can make sure that all clubs and all counties are getting the same kind of exposure to these improved whatever you want to call them, structures or coaching, then the game as a whole will improve and will increase and become a bigger sport on a national level.
Yeah, and I mean, apart from your playing, I mean, sport, you're working in Croke Park with the ladies.
Yeah.
Playing football.
Yeah, I ended up. I fell into the job, to be totally honest. I finished up a master's in DCU, and I was unemployed for a couple of months, maybe 5 or 6 months, and I ended up going to a football launch in Croke Park. I think it was a launch of maybe the National League or something.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, do you know what, I'll just bring my CV along with me. And I gave it to the CEO of ladies football, Helen O'Rourke, and I just said, listen, if anything ever comes up, I'm sitting in Dublin, I'm unemployed, I do whatever, etc., etc. Yeah. And a couple of maybe weeks or months later, she rang me, and one of her games development staff was leaving, and she needed someone to cover. So she said, will you come in and have a chat? And so I did, and I said, right, I'll cover it. She knew that there was going to be jobs or 4 positions coming up in the future. So she said, well, come in and do this and see how you get on, and maybe you'd go for the interview for one of these full-time positions. Yeah. And that's basically how it happened, Yeah. And so I was on part of the development staff there for 2 years about, and then I kind of moved in. I was doing a bit more of their PR and that type of thing, and producing their magazine. And now in the last while, I've gone from a full-time member of staff to, I suppose, a more part-time, sort of working on specific projects and that type of thing for them. But the other side of it then is I'm trying to develop my own, I suppose, career in sports and in coaching and in different things like that, which is, it's challenging in the present time, but it's exciting. It's what I like doing. Yeah. It's, I can see the impact that good clubs and good coaching and healthy living can have on people, from kids and people of all ages, Yeah. And it's something that I really believe in, to be honest. So that's where I'm at now. I'm kind of in a bit of an unknown territory. So I still have my part-time job with the ladies football, and the rest of it, I'm on a bit of a journey at the minute, I think.
Well, I've no doubts that you'll get there, Cliodhna, because one of the things you were saying before, I mean, you were involved in summer camps and encouraging girls and ladies to participate in GAA and sport. With all the distractions that's out there now, with all the bloody televisions and computers and you name it, even in a recession, it's hard enough to get a job in a recession, but with all that kind of distraction, it must be difficult then to actually try to encourage young people to of the benefits of participating in sport.
Yeah, it can be difficult, absolutely, because I mean, we're all unfortunately living more sedentary lifestyles, I think, and even, you know, our jobs, we sit an awful lot of the time, we drive, we're always sitting down, you know, and it's, I think when you get kids in the door, I think coaches have to remember that they have to put on nearly their best show. They have to take it seriously. They have to realise the impact that they can have on a kid or on a teenager.
Yeah.
And, you know, you see coaches sometimes, and listen, they're voluntary, you know, and they're throwing out their cones and they're trying to get things going, and it's, you know, setting up drills and worried about the drills and the games and the tactics of the game and all that type of stuff. But sometimes I think if we as coaches, we can get too caught up in that sort of stuff. If we forgot about that for a little while and spent more time getting to know the kids, getting to know what they're about, you know, finding out why they're there, and making sure that when the kids leave us, when they walk out the gate, it's not just can they solo on their left foot, but it's did they enjoy themselves, and did they does coming to our clubs, do they feel good about themselves?
Yeah.
You know, and if they don't, they won't come back, and that's I think something that we have to remember, and that's not wanting to put pressure on coaches or anything like that, but we have to take the potential of our role seriously, I think, and the opportunity that we have seriously.
Yeah. But I think, I mean, the fact that with you looking at your career, and I mean, I don't like the word role model, but for girls coming into, say, ladies football, and to have someone like you encouraging them and showing them how they can get enjoyment out of it. I mean, if I was one of them, that has to be a plus for you going down the road.
Yeah, absolutely, and I do get you know, I do get a lot of feedback in terms of from clubs that I work with and stuff, and they say, you know, it's great to have you coming in, because I suppose kids can go onto the internet or whatever and see videos of me having played in Crow Park and things like that. So, I mean, that does make an impact in some respects. But I think the more important thing is that I think what I try to be all the time when I'm dealing with kids, I try to be realistic, and I try and, you know, I say to them, there's days when you don't want to come training, there's days when I don't want to go training, and they have to be allowed to say that. And if we pretend that you need to be totally committed and think about football 24/7, you know, it's unrealistic, you know. And you have to allow kids and teenagers to be kids and teenagers, and to express themselves openly, you know, and say, you know, a lot of the time, especially with teenagers, people don't even ask them questions anymore. You know, I was with a group the other night, and I was saying, you know, you go to school, you're told what to do. You're at home, you're probably told what to do. Some of your friends maybe tell you what to do. I said, I have no interest in telling you what to do. Absolutely not. You know, I want you to tell me what you want your team to look like and be like. If all 30 of them are telling me that they only want to come for fun, well, then that's what we'll do. If all 30 say they want to win the championship, well, that's what we'll try and do. You know, so they have to be allowed to play a role as well. You know.
Well, that seems to be a very, very sound rationale, and I've no doubts whatsoever, Cliodhna, that with your success on the pitch and what you've done in your life so far, that you'll make a great success out of it, and I wish you all the best on it.
Thanks a million.
And thanks very much for that.